Allow me to introduce myself. I am Count Frightculous, and I will be your guide into the chilling, spooky scariness of the world, and maybe even perhaps the universe. I just want to start off by saying that smoke was very weak tonight, very weak. But anyway, we're here with another edition of reviewing scary stories. I hope you have enjoyed them so far. And I know a lot may be thinking, hey, these stories seem pretty tame. Oh, now the smoke wants to come out. Look at this, here it comes now. Oh, here we go, very scary smoke. Okay, thanks a lot. A little too late there, okay? Now some of you think, hey, these stories are pretty tame stories. How can you even say they're scary? Well, because there wasn't a code. They had a rule set on the books. They couldn't show too many graphic, because these books would be sold to children and the like. So they had to have a code that they would use so that you couldn't, show just anything. Now, there are some books that were made, the pre-code books they call them, that do not have that to worry about. And there are a lot more, I would say a lot more gruesome images. The ideas in them are a lot more disturbing. And maybe we can get to some of those books one day. But for now, we'll stick with these. We work our way up. We have to build up some stamina, so that we can actually handle those more scarier books that even more and scary. So we will have to rate them even differently, because they are beyond the imagery in some of those is a lot more than the subtleness that we get in some of these. But that reminds me about something about scariness. Scariness and frightening and horror and all that, it's not just the gruesome images and somebody's arm, getting ripped off or blood squirting out everywhere. Actually, one of the most scary things out there, this thing that scares almost everyone, is the fear of the unknown. Because you don't know what you don't see, right? You can't see it, so you get scared because you can only imagine. And it's inside your own imagination what frightening thing could be there in the shadows or where you can't see. And so a lot of times in the horror movie, just building that suspense and not knowing and just hearing the scream off the camera or seeing the big brooding shadow on the wall or something like that is much scarier a lot of times than just showing, the blood shooting out of the eyes. Some people just like the gruesomeness of that, and that's your thing. You might be a little disturbed. I don't know that I want to hang out with you late at night alone in a dark alley or anything like that. I don't know why we would be there, but I'm just saying, that takes a different kind of mindset to just want to watch all the gore and the blood and everything like that, But the suspense, the fear of the unknown, that really is the heart of a horror or a scary story, right? Anyway, I just want to give you that little bit of information there about horror and scariness. It doesn't have to be bloody and gory and crazy thoughts. It's just that fear of the unknown, the scariness, the suspense that we can build from not knowing, right? And so, we are going to have our book tonight to review, and like as always at the end, make sure you stay to the end, because we will have the demon baby to give her official rating of how scary she thinks the story is. And so she does that with a head spin. One head spin being the least scary, all the way up to 5 very scary head spins. So, for now, we will start and try to figure out, we're waiting actually. I'm waiting myself for a certain thing to happen here. Is it going to? There it is, okay. Who could that be beating on the door? Very late, did not come in at the right time, but hey, it's okay, we're still going. It's the Grim Reaper, of course. And he has chosen this book of scary stories for tonight. And I'm going to warn you now. Never deny the choice of the Grim Picker. Once the decision is made, it must not be undone. And so now we can go and take a closer look at the book of scary stories to review. Right away, we look at the cover, and at the top in the big bold letters it says Boris Karloff, Tales of Mystery. So if you're not familiar with Boris Karloff, he became very famous for playing the Frankenstein monster, and he became a horror icon. And he also, a little side note, he was the voice on the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Just a little Wikipedia fact for you there. Not that you couldn't go and look it up, but I give it to you now for free. For free, you can have that one. All right, anyway, just wait. You'll take some kind of quiz, and that will be a question. You'll be, thank you, Count Frightculous, for telling me that little piece of information. I needed to know that. Now my day is complete. All right, anyway, the cover here. I'm looking at it. So right away, Boris Karloff. I'm assuming he has something to do with the book. They wouldn't put his name on the title without it. And they have a picture of him from something there. They should have had him as the Frankenstein monster, maybe. That would be scary, wouldn't it not? But anyway, I look at the cover, and to me, it's not very scary. I mean, there is a man being dragged away, or I don't know exactly, by some kind of people there, and then he's being headlocked there with the arm. But to me, this looks more like Indiana Jones or like an adventure series book, more than a scary story book, right? I mean, scary stories, you want the ghost or some kind of goblin on the cover or something scary. Now, there is this weird-looking monster thing, but that looks more like a statue to me. So I don't know. I'm like I said again. I'm not the artwork is good. I'm okay with the painting of it. Just the image that they chose for the cover to me is lacking. I think there probably is a story in here that might have been able to really draw you in, to scare you, oh my goodness, I have to see what's going on there. This one, it looks like if you're into the action adventure, then yes, this one of course. Or if you're just a fan of Boris Karloff, then you might want to get this book as well. At the bottom, the words, two modern-day thieves with old ideas stumble into an ancient treasure-filled world. Again, I don't get scared reading that. I just think, okay, action adventure, let's go, this will be fun. Hey, let me put on my, safari hat. So, with that, again, I'm not super impressed with the cover. Let's hope, again, the stories inside make up for a little bit of lack of marketing on the cover. Let's begin with the reviews of the scary stories. Are you ready now to review this book of scary stories? The book that has been chosen for us to review is this one, Boris Karloff, Tales of Mystery. Now, as we know, Boris Karloff was a famous horror icon from the 1930s. He played Frankenstein. So, it's going to be interesting to find out what does he have to do with this book and the stories in it. Let us find out. So, the first story is titled, To Cure or To Kill. Ooh, it's a bit creepy, right? Ooh, very sinister. Let me just surmise the story real quick. The story is a man who contracts a weird disease that turns him into a monster. And then he kills as he's the monster. But then finds out that the people that he killed, the son, grows up and wants to get revenge on him. And then in the end, this boy ends up contracting the same crazy disease and becomes a creature himself. And then he understands the whole part of the monster, and he forgives him. And then the two try to find a cure for this crazy monster disease. So, that's it in a nutshell. That really is. I've summed that up in 30 seconds. That's the review. No, just kidding. Let's go further into this. There's more to see. There's some Very frightculous moments in here, I have to tell you right now. As we see here, at the very beginning, there's a man standing on the road as this car zooms past him. Come to find out, this is Boris Karloff. He's there in the story. How is that amazing? That's amazing. The couple in this car are wise not to pick up hitchhikers at this unearthly hour. But alas, they might have made an exception in my case. I could have stopped them before it was too late. So apparently Boris Karloff knows what's going to happen, and he just lets them drive by anyway, and lets this whole tragedy unfold. If Boris Karloff could have just made a little more of an effort to stop the car, all of this could have been averted. But no, he allowed it to happen. That is the sinistercism, is that a word? Of the Boris Karloff. So anyway, Frankenstein monster he is in real life. No, Boris Karloff is actually, this is just a make-believe story. I don't, anyway. Let's move on. And then they say, John, what's that strange animal on the road? Animal, Sylvia? He looks more like a human to me. Besides, there are no wild animals in these. You see this guy looks like a Dr. Jekyll crazy monster person. And they swerve off the road and they crash. And then here comes the police. They're already looking for him, apparently. Say, but we're too late. It looks like he's killed somebody. Get your chains ready. Remember, our orders are to capture him alive, if possible. And there they are. They're swung around him with all the chains, and this monster's very strong. Here they are. What are we supposed to do with him now? We were told to deliver him to the hospital at state prison. So they're on their motorcycles. Their chains, are they just dragging him back, or is he running with them? Is it like a dog on the leash, and they drag him? I don't know. They get him back there, though, apparently, because here, I gave him a sedative. He's fast asleep. Are you Professor Brogan's assistant, Mr. Hart? Yes, Dr. Laird. It was I who phoned the police when that bizarre change came over him. This is where it turns, a very funny turn here. I'm like, what? What is going on? Tell me, Hart, did the professor visit the tropics recently? Why, yes, he returned only last week. How did you know? It's like, this man became a monster, and he instantly knows, he must have been in the tropics. Here we go. He has the symptoms of a rare tropical disease, a virus which strikes maybe 1 in a billion people. Fortunately, there is a remedy for this illness. This doctor is so good. He knows that this is a rare illness. Only 1 in a billion, not 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, even 1 in a million. 1 in a billion chance that he could have contracted this virus in the tropics. My question is, why was he in the tropics in the first place? And how did he contract this 1 in a billion chance to get this disease? Nevertheless, he turned into the monster and he killed some people. So, of course, they cure him. They bring him out. He says, this medicine must enter his bloodstream gradually so his body can grow used to it. So they do. They change him back into a human. And he finally, where am I? What happened? Relax, Professor Brogan. We have a lot of explaining to do. You better believe it. 1 in a billion explaining to do. Later, I can't believe that I was the monster you described. You were all right, and I'm afraid you'll have to stand a pre-trial hearing for the deaths of those people in the car. This is crazy now. Again with the attorneys and the law, right? Not only did this man contract a 1 in a billion virus that turns him into a hideous monster, he kills people while he's the monster. This doctor says, I can cure him. He cures him, but as soon as the man comes out, he's not even been back human 5 minutes, and the doctor's like, by the way, you're going to court. You're going on trial for the people that you murdered as the monster. I mean, that, my friend, is horror. Can you imagine you wake up and they say, you're going to court. You killed a bunch of people. It's like, what? I don't even know what happened. So, of course, they're in the court, and the doctor's there. The doctor testifies. While in the monster form, Professor Brogan had no control over his actions. To punish him would be like branding him for another man's crime. And so they allow him to go free. But here we are in the court. Look at this. But one courtroom spectator greets the verdict with bitterness. Maybe you convince the others, Professor, but sooner or later, you'll have to answer to me. See, he has rage growing, hatred growing within him. We know that this is not going to turn out well for the young lad unless he can let go of the pain. But something tells me he will not. So Dr. Brogan decides he's going to leave and start a new life. He wants to change his name. He wants to have a new start. But this is another crazy thing that happens here. Look at this. To me, this doctor here, Dr. Laird, is the one that's the creepy man in this story. Not the monster. Dr. Laird, I think, is the sinister one. Because look at this now. Dr. Laird says, oh, by the way, see, he says here, I even intend to change my name. And the Dr. Laird says, perhaps that's best, and you can always depend on my help. But I must warn you of one thing. Bum, bum, bum. What? You're going to warn me of something? What could it be? I only arrested the disease. There is no known cure for it. Any undue pressure or excitement can turn you back into a raging beast. Now, don't you think that that's an important piece of information? Maybe that should have come out in the trial. That could have changed the whole course of that trial, right? But no, the Dr. Laird failed to mention this. Well, they didn't ask. I just gave you my expert opinion that while he's a beast, he's really not responsible for himself. Crazy stuff. Dr. Laird, look at his face. He looks like he could be up to something. I think he's maybe the one that discovered this disease. I don't know. Anyway, he's very scared. Dr. Brogan moves on. He comes up with his new life. He becomes the head scientist. He's a great bacteriologist. He becomes the head of the biology department, you know. He changed his name to Curtis, by the way. And now he's working in the lab and he's doing all of this stuff. But he's still a little nervous. And then all of a sudden, a man walks in. You work late hours, Professor Curtis. Or should I say, Professor Brogan? What? Who are you? I was a teenager the last time you saw me in court. Take a good look, Professor. I'm Ernest Porter, the son of the people you killed. It took me years, but I tracked you down. And here, the hatred that grows in him. Ever since the trial, I've lived for one purpose, to make you pay for your crime. That is where he went wrong. He should have overcome all of that rage and hatred in him, and he wouldn't be in the predicament he's going to be in now. Follow along. Again, look at this, Dr. Curtis, or Dr. Brogan. Look at that left hook. Bang! Knocks him out practically. But what happens is he smashes into a vial, and he gets this liquid all over. And he says, oh no, it's happening. Well, what are you talking about? He turns into the monster. Ernest turns into the monster as well. And the creature, and they're going to shoot it, and Curtis says, no, I will tranquilize it. And then he gives him the same cure that he got, and he comes out of it. And some days later, as a bewildered patient regains his consciousness, you mean I became a monster like you? Yes, that vat you smashed in my lab. It contained the virus that causes the malady. Again, Dr. Curtis, very careless. Why would you leave something like that in a very breakable glass container? Wouldn't you put that something in solid that's not going to get away? I mean, we could have learned a lot during COVID on this, you know? They could have learned, like, hey, look what could happen. You leave stuff laying around, things are bad are going to happen. Cover that up, put a piece of foil over it, you know? Wrap it in some towels or something so it doesn't break so easy. Put it in a something that's not going to shatter and get the virus everywhere. He's like, you see, Ernest, I was using the virus in my research to develop a permanent cure for the illness. And some of it got into my bloodstream, I didn't realize a thing, just as you didn't realize what you did to my parents. I'm glad you understand, son. Now that I've turned you into a beast, you can now understand why I did the things I did. But the real person we should be going after is Dr. Laird, because he's the one that didn't tell us that I would be sick this whole time in court, and they could have, put me away somewhere where I wouldn't turn back into the beast or give me more of the virus to play with, even though I'm already infected with it. How did he get a hold of that? Give me a break. And then he says, now, like myself, you must avoid any strong excitement or pressure until I come up with a cure. You will, Professor, with my help. That is, if you can use a good assistant. Look who pops his head in at the very end. Mr. Karloff. What does he have to say? Something tells me between the two of them, they'll soon have that cure. Meantime, I'd advise you not to cause them any undue agitation. Well, ha ha ha, Mr. Boris Karloff. Make sure you don't get any of that virus spilled onto you, Mr. Sarcastic Remarks. So what did you think? Was that scary? It was not very scary, but it was more like a drama. It was like a horror soap opera, right? I mean, the boy, his parents are killed, and he grows up, he goes after. This man changes his whole life, after he becomes the monster. They let him out of court, but then it finds out, it's like the organ music, brrr. Oh, I forgot to tell you, you can never cure it permanently. It's like, whoa. Anyway, it was an interesting story, funny, it had some good parts, yes. Now we're on to story number 2 of the third story of the book. This is the second story. It's titled, A Turn of a Switch. And the story is these two men, they don't seem like they're very intelligent, but they seem kind of like they're adventurers. I'm assuming this is from the front cover, which it is. And so they are wandering about, the car breaks down, and they wander into a hidden civilization. And they're so shocked and amazed, and they're walking around and they find all these jewels and gems and valuables laying around, like gold things, statues or whatnot. And they start, the greed swells in them, yes, and they want to steal these things, right? Like, oh, let's take some of this stuff. And the villagers apparently don't care. They just let them wander in. They don't ask any questions. They don't speak English. They can't communicate with them, but they just watch them wander in like no big deal. But then at one point, a strange ray comes out of this pyramid and it zaps them, and they freak out and they, what is that? What was going on? And the people are chanting this thing. They keep mentioning Raxus. And so they say, oh, this Raxus must be the one in charge. And so they go to look for him, and they go into the pyramid, and they find out that the pyramid, it's kind of like a Wizard of Oz, that they see this thing that the people were worshiping, but it turns out just to be an electronic device. And as he's trying to fiddle with the switches, they become hypnotized and they get trapped in this civilization. So we can backtrack just a few. I will just give you a few panels from this one. It's not very scary. It's more like an Indiana Jones adventure, and these two bungling idiots, to me, they wander in, they scooter around, they get in trouble, and now they're stuck there. They should have just left well enough alone. They shouldn't have fiddled with the switches, right? So here we see, but of course, I have to read the Boris Karloff comment. Here he is at the beginning. How peaceful this place, unsullied by the progress of modern man. Can life be more simple, more serene? Let's hope it stays that way. Well, something tells me, Mr. Boris Karloff, you know more than you're speaking here. So these two men, they come in, and yes, they're looking around. They're like, how is it possible? A centuries-old civilization still alive. I guess hidden away here. They never kept pace with the outside world. And so they wander in, and again, you see the people saying, Raxus, and they're like, hey, look at this, But see, look, they don't even care. They're like, who cares, He says, hey, I see what you mean. Just a handful of that glitter could net us a fortune, right? And so then they go on, and we see, they're calling them names. They're not nice guys, because look right here. Do you suppose the rubes would mind if we helped ourselves to a few? Rather than coming in and being grateful that they found this place and they want to learn about it. No, it's like, they're rubes, the dummies here, let's steal their gold and get out of here. But when they try to pick something up, the people kind of grab at them, and then they get aggressive, and then that's when the pyramid shoots down at them. And, Parker, who, what hit me? I don't know. I didn't even see anything. They keep talking about Raxus. This is where they go in the pyramid. Great Scott. Is that what they're so afraid of? See the faces there. That is a pretty spooky panel there of these faces. They go in, and what do they see? This giant statue, yes, and it zaps the weapons from them, and they're scared, and they say, we better get out of here. But then all of a sudden he said, hold on, those sounds coming from behind it. And he goes to look. They're pretty brave. They have no fear here. They just go behind this spooky looking statue, and they see all these controls. Would you believe Raxus is a robot? How could such primitive people build this electronic marvel? It could be the remains of some ancient super civilization designed to sense danger and fight it off. But then he starts fiddling with the switches. Now, if this was an ancient controls, how would this man in any way know how to control it? And he's fiddling around, and then the people come in because the alarm goes off, and he's chanting, this robot is chanting a bunch of things, and the people come in, and he says, lay off. In another moment, Raxus will be a dead god because he's trying to pull this switch. This switch looks like the main control. If I can just get my hands on it. Well, he doesn't. And they hold him in front and they get hypnotized. And now they are forever lost in this civilization. And here we go. Boris Karloff. Royce and Parker have found something they weren't looking for. A steady job and peace of mind. Well, Mr. Smart Aleck, actually that is a pretty funny statement. And actually, these two men are probably better off because it seems to me that they were probably, you know, these type of guys that are looking for a deal, they're looking for a quick fix, they're constantly stealing something or trying out new things, and they probably were always just going from dollar to dollar to dollar, job to job, or just wandering around with no real meaning in life. And now they are hypnotized and they can worship this robot god and they'll probably be fed, and who knows, they may even meet another hypnotized person, a lady, and have a hypnotized family together, and they all worship the robot until the battery dies in the robot, or I don't know how it's running, if there's electricity or not. But either way, it's not a very scary story. I don't feel sorry for these men. I feel like they came out better in the end, didn't you? All right, let's get to the final story here of Boris Karloff's Tales of Mystery. This one is titled The Final Test. And this one is about a man, and he's in a control room, and there's guys out controlling the panels, and they're running tests on him, hot and cold, and all this to see. They're trying to find the breaking point of humans, because it says in there they're wanting to travel outside into outer space. Oh, the scariness of outer space. And so they want to find out what man can handle, so they're putting him through all these extreme tests. That's all it is. I think that the point of the story was just to say that the mind creates a lot of crazy things, and you start to think and imagine things are real. The fear of the unknown. When you can't see something in the shadows, you start to create things in your mind, or you start to see things that aren't really there, right? The more you push the brain, the more you push the mind to the limits, the more it can go insane. The more you will start to develop craziness, and you could start to think you're a creature. In this case, it seemed that the mind over matter actually worked, and he turned himself into a creature. So we'll just look at a couple of panels. We of course have to look at Boris Karloff's comment. His heart, it's going like a trip hammer. Return to normal climate. Normal climate, I say. Right, doctor. And then we have Boris Karloff over here. So the strange ordeal turns out to be a test, a laboratory experiment. But something tells me the experiments may be going too far. Well, Boris Karloff, I'm afraid you're right. And as always, you are foreshadowing things to come. And why are you there? Why are you there, Boris Karloff? How do you know where to be at the right time when all of these bad things are going to happen? Mr. Boris Karloff. But like I said, they're running the test, and they say, you better back off. He looks like he's getting worse for wear, but he says, no, I'm fine, just keep going. But then at one point, we see, here, he screams, and he says, no, please don't come near me. And then we see, help, he's trying to kill me. And they say, great Scott, he sounds like his mind has snapped. And they run into the room, and there's nothing there but just him. But he said, there, I was catching my breath, steeling myself for the next test, when suddenly, no, please, don't come near me. Help, he's trying to kill me. This thing disappeared as you entered the chamber. So that tells me, you see, his mind, to me, was playing tricks on him. And they said, you know what, we have to stop the test. And they put him into the hospital and said, you need to relax. We need to get you back to normal. And he says, shortly in the infirmary, this sedative will keep him asleep for at least 12 hours. Look in on him from time to time, nurse. Yes, doctor. Do you think he'll recover? Who knows? The brain is a mysterious organ. I hope, Professor, this teaches you a lesson about your endurance test. Afterwards, as the nurse makes her rounds, still fast asleep, his covers need straightening. Gasp! Doctor, orderly, somebody come quickly. Something terrible is happening to Mr. Blakely. And you see his hands are monster hands. And now we have again Boris Karloff finishing it out. Apparently Blakely's vision was of himself turning into that creature. How long do you imagine it will take to cure his condition? Look at him there with his little sly look. And he snuck into the hospital dressed as a doctor. Look at him, Boris Karloff, snuck into the hospital dressed as a doctor just so he could give his sarcastic remark about this poor man who's becoming a creature because of all the psychological damage they did to his brain running these tests. Anyway, Boris Karloff, you, my friend, are a sinister dude when it comes to your book, Tales of Mystery. And so, those are the scary stories contained in this book. Do you find them scary at all? Maybe you would like to leave a comment and let me know which one you thought was the scary one, or which one you liked, or just comment on some of the actions within the story. What do you think of Boris Karloff interacting here with his little snide remarks? Of course, he's famous for Frankenstein, monster, but in his book, they give him a bit of an attitude, don't they? So anyway, it's quite humorous. I enjoyed it immensely, but we must get the final rating of the book. And for that, we have The Demon Baby. And now we have come to the end where we will get the official rating by The Demon Baby. So let's see, is she aware there and will give us a rating for this book of scary stories that features Boris Karloff as the narrator of all things. All right, there's the demon baby. There she is. She's aware, and now she can give us a head spin. That is one head spin by the demon baby. And that is 2 head spins by the demon baby. Okay, 2 head spins by the demon baby. And so then, oh no, she took another half a head spin away again. So only 1.5 head spins for Boris Karloff's Tales of Mystery. I have to say, yes, the stories maybe weren't all that scary. It was more of an action comic. And maybe because Boris, giving his little snide remarks at the end, took away from the scariness of the story. But they were interesting. I did think the first one, with the rare disease, 1 in a billion chances of becoming this monster. It's crazy. But either way, yeah, it wasn't totally very scary, was it? It wasn't all the scariness there. So anyway, Demon Baby, again, she gives us her objective opinion. Well, that's a contradiction, isn't it? Now, with that, I thank you for joining. You've made it to the end. Maybe you've already subscribed. You can go ahead and click the like. But the other thing I will tell you is, even though that was a book of scary adventures, go out and maybe find some good books for you to read too. There's a lot of these books out there. Tons of them out there. Thousands of these books hidden away, like I've said before. Hidden away in boxes and maybe, you know, being used as a doorstop somewhere, or maybe somebody's, you know, who knows, putting it over the window to cover it up because, you know, they didn't have proper drapes or whatever it is, you know, or they were using it so they don't get paint on one side or the other. But they're out there. These books are still out there, intact. They may be tattered and torn, but that's part of the scariness and spookiness about them. It makes them even more spooky, and you can have some fun just reading them and enjoying the contents. Don't worry so much about the value of it all the time. The value of it is what you get out of it in your imagination. If it's scary or just fun. And like I like to say, if it's pretty funny and it has some scariness as well, or it's just so scary because of the funniness, or the funniness makes it a little scary, it's Frightculous. Anyway, with that, I bid you farewell. I am Count Frightculous, and I wish you chilling, spooky, yet peaceful scariness.